like everybody has their own way of doing it. You have to figure out your own way. So maybe you do go back with your parents, you start looking up apartments, you start looking up, transportation, and you say, okay, well, my apartment's going to cost me $800 a month. My transport, T-Pass is going to cost me, $200 a month or something like that. Mm-hmm. That's my $1,000 there. I need food. I need this. Mm-hmm. How am I going to be able to bring that stuff in and still do the passion and stuff like that? If you really want it, you'll break it down and go through that. But most people don't think like that in a business sense. So what would be really critical, I would say for artists out there who are listening to this, pick up a business book. Pick up a book about starting a small business. Pick up a book, written from another artist who has run themselves as a business, and read that book and have an understanding. I was lucky enough.
Mastermind family, welcome back to the show. I am your host JoJo, and today's artist motivation, where we bring on the hottest, latest artists and allow them to provide insight, hope, inspiration, so you can go out and create amazing content. And today's star of the day is Michael Toney. Michael, how you doing, man? Welcome to the show.
Hey, what's up, man? Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm really excited to get this conversation popping.
Hey, and that's how we do it, man. And before we get the show started, we got to do the sound off call for the day, right? Mastermind family in the building. And so, Mike, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started on your journey, man.
I've been drawing and sketching, since I was like a kid. Just kind of off and on. I didn't really take it that seriously. And as I kind of got older and, got into a bunch of other things, I actually fell out of illustration. I went to school for design, which is kind of a different skill set. And then while in school, I started a clothing company that was there that kind of took a little bit away from, the sketching and the illustration that I kind of like. And a lot of my energy went into that company. It ended up being valued right around $2.2 million, which was interesting and kind of validating that, we could create something like that. And then, me and my business partner decided we want to do something different and kind of, liquidate that and just, look for a different path. And, in my search, I just kind of went back to art and just said, in 2013, I'm just going to draw every day. And it doesn't matter, for how long, just as long as I do it, and we'll just see what happens from there. So, I'm still on a journey to learn, still on a journey to get better, and to actualize my dream as an artist.
Man, that is crazy. So like, just doing that, you were like, I poured all this energy into, creating a company. Now I'm going back to basics in the sense of that's what I've always done, which is just sketch, draw, and pouring all my energy into it. And so you don't get the sense of feeling burnt out or bored while, pouring all your energy into that?
It's not that you feel burnt out or bored. Like there's just there's a level of passion that, when you have for something, mm-hmm. it just burns on its own, So like you can get tired or you can get, not so much burned out, but like worn out per se. Mm-hmm. And that's like your body. You know what I mean? Like your mind wants to keep going. Like if the body was willing, I could draw for 24 hours straight. But I gotta sleep. I have to eat. There's other things that I have to do. So, in that capacity, it's like, you get into something, especially if you're passionate about it, and you push forward. Like the clothing thing was like that. I'm into clothing. I'm into fashion. It shows in the way I draw my characters and the style in which I draw them. So it was something I was passionate about growing, and I'm also passionate about business. Before I even was a design major, I was actually a business major. I was a business major and a graphic design minor. And I just decided to transition to design because I liked it more. Yeah. And I felt I could always turn that into a business, mm-hmm. Because the skill sets for a business is transitive. You can translate your business skills onto anything. And I've always felt like I've had that. So, it was just like, when you have an energy to want to do more, it's hard to just stop that. And it doesn't matter what it is, you know, but it's from clothing to illustration. And if I ever get to a pinnacle in an illustration where I feel comfortable and okay, I'll probably pour that energy into something else.
Dang, that is crazy. So like, you know, I know that, you know, going day to day, it's different from being in a clothing company from now being, you know, an artist. So like, what is your day to day like as an artist, and what do you do? What are some of your practices that you do?
I mean, I try to do like warm-up sketches and stuff like that. I do have a day job that I go to, so a lot of my illustration is done outside of that. I'm an art director at an ad tech agency, so I do design, and I manage over other design projects and make sure the quality is basically like high quality creatives, and then I'll execute for like high quality clients. So but in the morning on my way to work, I use my Cintiq and I'll sketch. You know, I'll do sketches, I'll do warm-ups and stuff. When I'm in business meetings and stuff like that, if I'm doing calls over the phone or Skype, I have a sketchbook in there, and I'll basically be sketching and stuff like that while I'm on these calls. That's kind of like my warm-ups that I'm getting throughout the day. And then on my way home, you know, I'll try to draw and stuff like that. And in between that time, I kind of have to work in, you know, commissions and stuff, you know. Yeah, so like I always try to get a little bit of like warm-up drawings, warm-up sketches in, and I try to make sure those warm-up sketches are you know, like anatomy-based things or like fundamentals. So that way I can, you know, when I'm doing the fun stuff, I know what I'm doing, you know, or I'm getting better at knowing what I'm doing.
Dang. Like, I mean, the fact that you actually have a schedule that you're fitting in these, you know, warm-up sketches during the day and you work is like really amazing, because like it, you know, it goes to show you that if you want it bad enough, you'll make time for it. You'll make it a priority. You'll, you know, it's just, and it's clearly displayed, you know, with your work habit.
Yeah, you know, it's one of those things too where it's like, I started like a chapter of a Greek organization at my school, and one of the things that, you know, is very important to us is like anything worth having, you know, like you have to put effort into, and you're probably gonna, it's probably gonna cause you some form of a pain, especially if it's highly competitive, you know. So like, am I tired a lot? Yeah. Am I fucking exhausted? Yeah. Like I also try to, you know, like work out and stuff like that, you know, and like, you know, keep myself like in shape and just kind of, you know, whatever. And all of those things take energy out of you. But like, you know, it's like, it's just a part of it. You know what I'm saying? Like everybody sees like The Rock or Kevin Hart shining or whatever, but like the work that goes into that, like I'm sure they're tired mostly, or they want to see their families mostly, or they want to, you know what I'm saying? But then there's like the urge to do this thing, and you know, sometimes you're willing to just kind of put yourself on the line to do it. You know, a lot of artists that I like and follow, you know, they talk about how tired they are. You see their post at 2-3 a.m. You know what I mean? And, yeah, so you know that they're working at that, and that they're, you know what I mean, that it's taking a lot of effort, you know. So yeah, it's when you want it, you know, you have to face the pain for it, you know, and then you just, when that's going, you got to tell yourself like, this is what I wanted, you know.
Absolutely.
And when I'm tired or I'm whatever, I'm like, this is what I wanted. I wanted to do this thing. If I do it right, you know, I can make something of it.
Yeah, and you just, and you made that decision and you followed through with it, you know, despite, you know, the hours where it's like 3 in the morning and you have to get up at 6, so you basically don't get any sleep. And so you know why you're doing it, because you made that decision that I'm gonna do this, period, and I don't care if I get little to no sleep some days, and I don't care how hard I have to work. I'm gonna make this dream a reality, and clearly I see it, man.
Yeah, absolutely, man, absolutely. It's you know, that's what it takes, man. You know, if it was easy, everybody would do it, and you know, it's not. And if you know, another thing I heard that, you know, really makes a lot of sense. It's like doing the extra, going the extra mile. Like when you go the extra mile, you know, there's not a lot of people there. It's like a saying, and it makes a lot of sense. You start to see the more you start pushing yourself past those pain points where most people will give up, there's less and less people, you know, in that arena, especially if you're being very competitive, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And another question that, you know, I wanted to like ask you, since you have that mindset of a businessman. So how do you
down, like, in my opinion, if you're an artist, you're trying to live off of it, you really need to break down what you need to make to live, and then really how you need to make that. I know that sounds simple, but there's a lot of other factors that delve into that. You know, I'm constantly explaining to people about conversion rates. Like, you know, posting and getting likes is not about like who's cooler or whatever it is. Like, I know that I need to have like 10,000 impressions, right? To make 2 conversions, to make 2 people who want to come in and actually buy something from me. And if each of my drawings only gets 2,000 impressions, that means I need to produce at least 10 drawings to get 2 conversions. You know what I'm saying? So you think about, you know, based on your need basis, and like if you, you know, and you can't create art unless you meet Maslow's law of needs. So you need to have shelter, you need to have food, and you need to you know, like, have security, like a place to sleep. If you can't do those things, then you can't create art. So if you have to have a job that supports you until you can figure out your art business, I would say do that, and then figure out, okay, I need $1,000 a month to live. How do I make $1,000? If my artwork is $100 to $150 a piece, that means I need at least 10 pieces a month. And if it's based off my conversion rate, I was telling you, I need, you know, 10,000 impressions or something like that, then, you know, I need 10 times that amount or something to make my rent. You know what I mean? So I need, you know, 1 million or whatever, or 100,000 impressions or whatever, just to make $1,000 to cover my living expenses or to cover my rent and my food. And then everything else is extra to things that I like. You know, if you running your business as an artist, you have to think about, you know, the managerial aspects of the art. Because I see a lot of people, artists who have like 300,000-400,000 like followers or something like that, and I'm like, how do you not have your own show? How are you not, like, they're, you know, the networks pay for the level of impressions and reach that you have, and for you to bring that, you know, and that's, you know, lower level. There are artists at 1 million, 1.2, 2 million followers, and it's like, how are you monetizing that in the way that works the best for you? But most artists are not, you know, business people. Like, I've grown up in certain situations which had to make me enterprising in order for me to live. And I just happened to be an artist. So then, like, I pour that energy of, you know, enterprising into different art things, you know, whether it's my clothing company, whether it's, you know, doing design for other firms, whether it's, you know, now into my illustrations. I just really take that aspect, you know, and try to pour it into those other things.
Man, that is so critical, because you're right about so many different points. Like, for one, if per se a artist or a person has a, you know, a large significant following, even if it's not, you know, in the millions or anything, but it's like, how are you leveraging that to, like, basically help your business continue to function? There are too many companies that,
absolutely.
like you said, too many companies are out there willing to, you know, pay you a pretty penny if your audience is legit, in the sense of like how you are able to basically engage with them, if they're really engaging, or they really seeing what you're doing and things of that nature. I mean, and just take advantage of it. And another thing is, you know, yes, you need a job. If you don't have the business of your company or your art company, where it's like basically funneling for you, right, to like live off of that. So in turn, you do have to get a job. You don't, you know, I mean, if you're fortunate enough to go home and live with mom and dad, there's nothing wrong with that either. It saves money down the road so that you can make your dream happen quicker. I mean, there's just many different things, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's a million different avenues to do things. I used to work for Society Original Products, a clothing company, and the creative director used to say to me, he's like, look, man, and when I was working with him, I had my own clothing company. I actually had my own store at the time. Right? So
Are you serious?
Working with him, I had my own store, and I also was still in school.
Wow.
And he said to me, he said, look, man, I can tell you everything that we've done, but it doesn't mean you'd be able to do what we've done. You know what I'm saying? And that's because, one, we're different people. We design things differently. We have different opportunities. We have different connections. You could have copied everything that he did, but it doesn't mean I would have gotten picked up in the same way. It doesn't mean I would have been able to make the same connections or do what he's done. And to that capacity, like, you know, it's like everybody has their own way of doing it. You have to figure out your own way. So maybe you do go back with your parents, you start looking up apartments, you start looking up, you know, transportation, and you say, okay, well, my apartment's going to cost me $800 a month. My transport, you know, T-Pass is going to cost me, you know, $200 a month or something like that. That's my $1,000 there. I need food. I need this. You know, how am I going to be able to bring that stuff in and still do the passion and stuff like that? If you really want it, you'll break it down and go through that. But most people don't think like that in a business sense. So what is really critical, what would be really critical, I would say for artists out there who are listening to this, pick up a business book. Pick up a book about starting a small business. Pick up a book, you know, written from another artist who has run themselves as a business, and read that book and have an understanding. I was lucky enough to have put myself in those situations where I was able to learn, right? Yeah. And to become, you know, more versed in that aspect of it. But, you know, as an artist, you more opportunities will open themselves up to you, right? If you think of yourself as a business as well.
Man, ooh, you dropping some huge nuggets, man. That is so true, though. Like, people think that it's just, you know, well, let me not try to generalize, but a lot of artists have the sense that if I just do art, you know, the money will come. And it's like, well, not always. I'm not saying it's never going to happen, but like, you really need to like market yourself. You really need to promote yourself. You need to run your business like a business. Like, and if you don't, then you'll realize very shortly that you are not able to, you know, meet your needs, or you know, it's just, it doesn't function as you thought it would, you know?
Absolutely.
So I appreciate that. That's actually really, really, really good tips. So tell us a little bit about Iku. You know, I think that's something that you've created, correct?
Yeah, that's something I've created. So, so, you know, Iku the Keeper was just kind of an idea that came from, you know, it was just like one drawing I did like a little while back, and it was like, you know, after I decided to, you know, really transition my profile over to drawing mostly people of color, I found this image of this kid, and he had like this one long braid, and I thought that was like a really dope. I really wanted to add that to a design. I made this character, and then it just started spiraling. You know, I just had this concept of, you know, creating a story that combined something like, you know, The Godfather with, you know, like Naruto. I've always known I wanted to do something that had a hard magic system. You know, like something like Avatar, The Last Airbender, or Naruto, or Full Metal Alchemist. And I wanted to use, you know, African lore. And so a lot of things were swirling in my head, and Iku kind of came up. And, you know, like I just said to you, it's like The Godfather combined with, you know, Naruto. And in a sense that, you know, it's you know, it takes place in you know, a fictional area in Africa where there are 5 districts, and in those 5 districts, they're owned individually by an Omenhene. And Omenhene, in certain places in Africa, is basically like a king or a ruler.
Correct.
And you know, those kings or those rulers are really like under bosses of certain families and stuff like that. And they basically run those districts behind the scenes. You follow a character, his name is Iku, and he grows up in what is considered the lawless district. Ooh. And in his growing up and everything else like that, he develops his own little mini crew that's there. and they're just running to survive. And the story basically takes place on his 18th birthday, when his best friend, they find his best friend killed. His best friend never shows up to his birthday party, and then what ends up happening is they just it starts that as a mystery, like you're trying to just figure out what happened to his friend. And during that process, you learn a little bit more about like the whole building and everything that builds into that, the power systems, and everything else. And so he finds himself at the pinnacle and kind of dealing with these Omenhines and dealing with the structure of this lawless zone and stuff like that. I don't want to give too much away because it's very twisty-turny, but it has a very Machiavellian kind of art of war aspect to it. Okay. And that's why I say it's a little bit closer to like The Godfather in the way he's going to have to deal with these four families, and how he develops his own fifth family, to kind of deal with that. So in that process, you have, or in that whole world, you have Ashe, which, comes from the Yoruban kind of lore, which is basically just life energy. It's like the African version of Chi. Correct. Ashe lives in everything. Correct. And it it ties the universe together, essentially. Those people who are trained in Ashe, or understanding that life energy, are given a specific title, in that religion. In the situation that I'm writing in, it's just a title for anybody who, ultimately achieves the ability to control this thing. So very similar to like Avatar, that person is a bender, or in Full Metal Alchemist, that person is considered an alchemist. So anybody who's gone through a certain level of training or a certain level of understanding can manipulate Ashe in a certain capacity, and they're given this particular title. I'm still putting together a lot of the things, and I want to do the way I'm writing it, as I'm writing it in 3 kind of volumes, and then smaller, obviously chapters within those volumes. But I want to make it all feel very cohesive in one long arc. So I have a whole world building Bible, which I try to abide by. All of my references, all of my kind of studies and source materials and stuff like that I can kind of jump into and constantly go back, and so I'm not contradicting myself. This would be like my first real official project that I put out, so I want to try to not make it perfect, but do the best I can at it, and just see what happens with it. And then hopefully if I do another project too after that, I'll have the experience and under my belt, and so on and so forth.
Ooh, man, that sounds so cool, man. Oh, so when do you expect to drop a preview of it?
I'm hoping July, of 2019, of this year. I do have I had a little comic I was running a couple of years ago, where I think I updated it last year. I only did 1 chapter, but I think I have an understanding of chapter structures. I have an understanding of paneling and pacing and stuff like that. I think what I'm trying to do, which I'm finding is really hard, and I might talk to some friends who may be writers, but I want the theme and the emotion of it
to be conveyed in the picture.
Instead
of writing it.
I want it to feel like it melts. I want people to feel like they can be immersed in it. So I know that's going to take time, and everything else. So that's where I'm kind of at. I feel like I could write a chapter 1 right now, because I have the outlines and everything else in my head. But there's little things that I want to kind of go through and be boom. How do I add more personality here? How do I add more culture here? You know what I mean? Very similar to Hunter x Hunter, the things that Togashi does, where he really brings me in. You know what I mean? And with a little bit of a personal sense and stuff like that. So.
Ooh, okay. Yeah, all that takes is just working references, man. And just so with this manga that you're creating, do you plan to have it adopted, or what are your plans for it? The
plan is just to make it good. I think some of my friends or certain people have hit me up and they're like, so what's your goal with like your artwork, or what are you trying to do with it? And I'm like, I want to make it as good as I can, you know, because once you're good at something and other people think you're good at it, then you can really dictate what you want to do, you know. And so I see people like Lois VB or like Piccolo or Cyrene, and their numbers are crazy and their artwork is really good, and they're at a point where they can really sit down and dictate like what they want to do and like how they want to do it, you know what I mean? To like, you know, to anybody, you know, if you know, I work in a company right now, if you're an influencer and you have, you know, 1 million followers or, you know, 200,000 followers, and you come in and you're like, yo, I have this really good idea, and every time I post it or do something with it, my interaction rates and all this other stuff is off the chain, like, I think it would work best with you guys. Here's what I'm working with. They're going to have to sit down and listen to you, because to them, they're like, you're not even on a soapbox. Like, you're doing this, you know, whatever. If we give you the soapbox to stand on so you can reach more ears, you know, we know that this is a tried and proven thing.
Yeah.
You know, so what I want to do is I just want to make something that's good. And if it catches on and people start catching on and they're reading it and they're whatever, and I can publish a volume and, you know, go to Midtown Comics and go to some of these larger comic book, you know, places that have a lot of exposure. You know, Deadly Class just got adapted into a sci-fi show.
Yeah.
You know, it's one of those things where, you know, I don't, you know, it doesn't necessarily need to be mainstream, but if it makes an impact, you know, I can go to an AMC and be like, yo, you guys, we need a really dope show that could, you know, compete with whatever. And, you know, the climate is also right for a lot of things of color. You know what I'm saying? So,
correct.
You know, in this story that I'm writing, you know, all the characters in every, you know, it takes place in Africa. So, you know, or a fictional continent that is, you know, similar to Africa. So, you know, all the characters are black. You know, they're different shades of black. They're different whatever. So, you know, I have an albino character that's in there. You know, black people come in all different shades. You know, our hair colors can be different. Our eye colors can be different. And I think, you know, if it was ever adapted, there has never been a show like it on mainstream TV. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You know, we watched 3 seasons of Game of Thrones without seeing one person of color on there. You know what I'm saying? Like, you go watch a bunch of seasons of shows where they're just like no black people on there, and it's fine. You know, that happens all the time. You know, what is it? Vikings, you know, whatever. And it makes sense because of historically where it's at.
Yeah.
You know, so I create a show, you know, whether it's fantasy and it's pulling off some historical things, you know, it should be something that, you know, can do that as well. And as we've seen with Black Panther and, you know, a lot of these other things that, you know, black people or people of color will support those things because they want to see those things too. So if it does get adapted, I'll be super excited. But my main goal is really to just make something really good that I can be proud of and that can reach people, you know, the way certain comics and things have reached me.
Yeah, that's so practical, man. And it's really, really a good goal, because sometimes I feel like people are rushing because they don't want to feel like, you know, they're being left behind or something. And I get the sense that, you know, you don't want to take 20 years to like put out one chapter, but like, you know, it needs to be an appropriate pace where you're like, okay, this is good, even though it may not be perfect, but you know, it's good enough where I'm happy with it, you know. Yeah. And you just go ahead.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. And as long as it's good, I'm willing to put it out. I'm one of those people who feels like, you know, perfect is the enemy of good. You know, what is perfection? Like, you can't, you know, like reaching that height to that thing, you know, is hard. And as someone who's a business person who understands like an MVP, like a minimal viable product, you know, like knowing that if I bring this to 80%, most people don't know the difference between 80% and 100 really. Correct. And that last 20% really takes a lot more of your time to get done. I can release something at 20% and build it to its 100% full capacity, you know?
Yep.
Naruto's artwork was very different from the very beginning than it was in the end. Bleach's artwork was very different than it was, you know, into the end or when it was in its prime. You know, so there's a lot of there's a lot of things that you can, do and update and change, and a lot of ways you can do that. But first, you kind of just got to get it out. You know what I mean? You just got to like get it out. You just got to like get it done,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, for you, do you feel that, artists should be, using social media on a regular basis? And if so, like, how should they do it where it like works for them?
I mean, I don't see why you wouldn't use social media. So let's say you don't like care about, let's say you don't care about like, Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or something like that. You should be using a DeviantArt. You should be using an art station. Like, it really depends on what you want to do. If you're just drawing for fun and somebody to draw for yourself, that's absolutely fine. But you can't be like, well, I'm drawing and I want to do other things in the industry and I want to do whatever now, but you're not using these social accounts. I think it's kind of a shame. Not a shame, but I think you're doing a discredit to yourself.
Yeah.
Because I was given so many opportunities because of, my presence on social. I was approached by, a PR team for Black Panther. I've been approached by somebody who was a director of one of my favorite, shows growing up, to do artwork for them. So many different capacities, famous people that have hit me up, famous influencers and stuff like that, who basically started off the same way and built their influences high enough to really, make their way into the industry. And I, message and talk with these people regularly. And that's really because of my presence on social media and the work that I've been able to do, And so back in the day, the barriers to entry for something like this was so hard. It was so hard to, feel like you were going to get a show or to get picked up for a comic or to publish something. And now you have an opportunity to create something, prove that it works, and then bring it to some place and say, hey, look, this is proven. When I won Best Business at Northeastern, and I was talking to all these entrepreneurs or whatever, I mean, these guys were, millionaires selling their companies to Monster.com and all this other stuff. Mm-hmm. And they're like, the reason why we gave you guys Best Business and we gave you the booster was because you already had a business that worked. Like, you were already making money, you were already doing whatever. We just knew that if we gave you more money, that it would just accelerate something that you've already been doing.
Yeah.
That was why we ended up beating these other, places. And so that's what social media gives you. It gives you that opportunity. It also existentially gives you an opportunity to go back and constantly look at your work and be your hardest critic in order to get it to the place where you want it to be, and constantly help you grow. Connecting you to the world in different ways, connecting you to people that you can work with, not necessarily just work for. So there's a lot of benefits to that than the whole kind of, liking for confidence kind of culture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, that's true, man. Like, a lot of people, but the thing is, sometimes artists are like, well, I don't want to put my work out because I'm afraid that somebody's going to judge it. Like, what would you say to artists like that?
It should be judged. That's the point. Mm-hmm. Like, you're making art. If you're making art for yourself, then make the art for yourself and keep it, you know what I'm saying, for yourself and for whatever. But, if you're making art because somebody else made art that inspired you, that's your charge in life. That's your calling. You're making the art so you can inspire someone else and get your art to a certain point. And people will judge you. People will judge you on anything. You'll walk out of your house and people will judge you. It won't necessarily be the thing that, you're afraid of. I mean, I get people that say shit about my work. Oh, you missed this, or oh, you didn't do this, or oh, you didn't do that. And do I feel a certain way? Sometimes I do. But I get over it. I get thick-skinned or whatever. I get people who call me racist because I only really draw people of color. But I'm like, I've never, some of my favorite artists that I rock with, they don't draw people of color. They just, they draw white or Asian people. Or, they're seemingly Asian, with phonetically kind of white features. So, phenotypically white features, excuse me. And so, it's like, I never say anything to them about it. I never say, like, whatever it is, or they don't get necessarily that same flack, I would say, from their own people. And so, when I look at that, I'm just like, it is what it is. Like, I know that there are people who message me, moms who message me, like, my son wants to cosplay as your character. you know, I want to do a group cosplay with my kid and your characters and stuff like that. You know, people hitting me up like, man, you inspired me to draw because I didn't think you could really draw black people in anime, and I can see your work in anime like that. And so, you know, for all the people who hate on you or who make you feel uncomfortable, there are other people that will lift you up, you know, but the world is like that. Some days it rains, you know, so you just got to be prepared for that. And that's in any, you know, arena.
Ooh, man, that is some truth. Like, it's true, man. When, you know, when you're putting yourself out there, you got to expect to be judged, and you got to be ready to have thick skin, man. Like, just because, you know, that's somebody else's opinion, you know, don't let it affect you. You know what you're doing. You know why you're posting. I mean, you're posting your work so that the world can see it. And those who gravitate towards it will gravitate towards it. And those who will, you know, smite it will smite it. I mean, you'll get the best of both worlds. I mean, you'll get stories like you were saying. Like, people are inspired to, like, draw, you know, people of color characters, you know, or, you know, people cosplaying your characters that you've created. So, I mean, like, that, there's a give and take. And I think if people would just focus on what it will do for people, you'll get over what other people think about your work, and you won't even care. You won't even worry about it.
I mean, at the end of the day, especially with this new internet age and culture, people always have some shit to say, and that should not, you know, that should not be the problem. You know what I'm saying? You know, if you're afraid of being judged, then, like, your artwork may never be seen, right? Because someone's judging. Personally, you should, you know, welcome it, especially because some people will say some shit and it will help your work for the better. You know, like, I don't mind constructive criticism, especially when people come at it from the right angle and they're like, hey, you know, I thought this was cool, but I think if you did this, or I think if you considered this may be better. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I get people all the time like, oh, you know, more black people with lightning powers. I feel like every time a black person draws, they have lightning powers. I'm like, so what? Nigga, I wanted to draw lightning powers. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't care. You know, I get him. He's right. But I'm like, this is my character with lightning. And I know there are others like it, but this one is mine. You know what I'm saying? But then simultaneously, you know, I get some people who, you know, come at me from a different angle where they're saying, hey, you know, like, someone made a comment about, like, having, you know, black characters with Japanese names. And I'm like, I needed to hear that. And I felt like, you know, other artists and creators of color need to hear that. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? They'd be like, yo, like, how does that, you know, sound? Like, what's the point of that? Yeah. You're gonna draw a character of color if he doesn't live in Japan or he doesn't have a whatever. Give him a different name. Correct. You know what I'm saying? But it was important for me to hear that. It was important for me to hear some of these things. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I see people say, and I'm like, yeah. So you should be willing to take some criticism, and you got to be able to sift through it. Some shit people say will actually, you know, make a difference. Make sense. And as an artist, when you draw something, you make something from your heart. You know, it hurts more. You know what I'm saying? When someone says something, but you got to try to move past that to grow. You know what I'm saying? To be a little bit better. And you know, the judging is important to moving forward. To all the people who are like, yo, I don't know if I want to draw and post my work or someone's gonna steal it. That's very fucking rare. It's very rare. And if someone does steal something from you, you know, you confront them. Especially if you're using social media, like, yo, this has been tagged and dated during certain times, so I know you took it from me, you know, for whatever it is. Yeah. But it's also flattering. If someone steals something from you and they use it in the industry and it catches on, that's the one thing that they'll get from you. But the talent and the skill that it took to make that is a lot harder to recreate. You know what I'm saying? The idea and the process. Yeah. I put up Equal the Keeper. If someone takes his character design and uses it in something and it blows up, I'm like, okay, like, I get it. That lets me know the climate is right for me. Yeah, I'll challenge the person on it. If I don't win, I'm like, fine. I'd be like, whatever. Because that's not going to be the only good thing I create. Yeah, I'll create more. You know, the formula that I use to make him is not going to be different than I'm going to use to make and build other characters. Yeah. You know, so I go from there and protect myself in another way. But you won't even know if your stuff is popping enough for people to really steal it or take it. Yeah, you can watermark it. Yeah, you can do all that other stuff. But to me, I feel like that is frivolous. And in most cases, people who wanted to use my work have come to me and asked me, you know, and helped me grow to other levels by doing so. So, you know, make it. put the work out there. If you're drawing every day, it doesn't take shit for you to take your phone and take a picture of it.
So practical, man. Like, yeah, that's good stuff, man. Okay, so Mike, you gotta tell us, man, what are some final words of wisdom that you would like to impart on the show, man?
Final words of wisdom, man. I just, if you're an artist and you're listening to this or whatever, just keep drawing. Just keep drawing, just keep producing work, just keep making things. Make sure you're posting things and you're trying to, widen your exposure. As people who are creators, don't forget to be a consumer as well. Go support other artists, go read comic books, watch anime, watch, the DC animated series and stuff like that. I'm a big DC fan. So, go and consume so that way your brain and your mind can grow to make new things, and constantly think of making new things. And you know what? The game's only over when you stop. You know what I'm saying? When you quit. So just keep drawing and keep producing things, and you'll hit roadblocks and you'll go through certain things, but you're not done until you stop yourself. And oftentimes the winning thing is right on the other side of that hardship. So I know as artists we get down on ourselves a lot, but we just gotta try to keep our heads up and just keep making and producing work until you feel like you've hit the stage you want to be at.
Ooh, that is some good words of wisdom, man. Thanks for being on the show and just providing inspiration and hope to the people, man. So where can the people find more of your work or just connect with you?
I mean, Instagram is where I primarily have most of my work. I'm currently going to be working on an illustration site that will, basically have my Instagram feed on it. It'll have a couple tentpole pieces that talks about, my main projects that I'm working on, and links to those places where you can go and read that stuff. But currently, just following me on my Instagram, you'll get updated with that. And yeah, just keep an eye out and then also my YouTube channel, which is basically just Mike Toney. If you YouTube Mike Toney, you'll see it. And hopefully I'll be able to get back into doing my videos and stuff like that, and I can inform people visually of new steps and new projects that I'm working on.
Excellent. Mastermind family, that is going to do it for the show. We hope you enjoyed our special guest, Mike Toney, and so be sure to like, subscribe, and we'll see you guys on the next episode.
Black magic. The present feels like the past. It's deja